Welcome to Magical Moments with Alena Chapman, the place for you to break free from the norm and celebrate your life, because what we believe in our hearts becomes our reality. This is Magical Moments with Alena Chapman.
Welcome to Magical Moments for that ease and that betterment in your life. I'm your host, Alena Chapman. And I love bringing you that ease and that betterment because you know something, you deserve it. You really, really do. Sometimes we don't feel like we do, but yes, we really do. And we are at our best when we have it. So for this morning's magical little nugget, I'm going to be bringing you something that I actually learned when I was little. Unbelievable, huh? We always talk about all the terrible things, the old beliefs that aren't serving us, the paradigms, whatever, the critical mind. But sometimes there are some really awesome things we've learned. And when we clear away all the critical mind from our mind, then the beautiful memories start to surface. And one of the ones that I remember is that both my mom and dad, both of them, always said that every day is a new day. It's a new beginning. And so even when I was 8 years old, I woke up every morning thinking, this is a new day. I can be or do whatever. I can be who I want to be. Yes, I have to go to school, which I have to say was never my favorite thing. However, I can decide how I want to be at school, how I want this day to be. And I knew this at 8 years old, 8 and 9. And when I got older, I learned that, okay, so maybe the day didn't turn out right, but how was I at the end of the day? I got to choose because it was a new beginning. Every day. I could deal with problems in a new way. I could deal with people I didn't like or didn't like me in a new way. I had choices because it was a new day. And when I even got started in all this, I even added to that. I decided I didn't even want to take all that stuff of my day to bed. And so every night I take a shower and I take my hand and I go down my body all around. And you can do this too if you like. And I take off all the cords of the day, all the stuff of the day, even if it was good. Off it goes down the drain. I visualize it just going down the drain. And I allow myself to be just me. And it helps me to sleep. Because I'm free. I'm not carrying in stuff of tomorrow because that's a new day. I don't even know what tomorrow's going to bring. Really? Do we ever? And the day today is done. So off it goes, and then I go to bed. I listen to my wonderful music, which is going to segue right into this wonderful show today. I've got a very special show for you. And then when I wake up in the morning, it's a fresh new day. Remember that. Start your day. Every day is new, guys. Every day. And that gives you a fresh start every day. I hope you enjoy that little magical nugget. If you go around all week with that, I guarantee you're going to see some big changes in your life. You're going to be feeling different. You're going to be acting different. You're going to be making choices and feeling a freeness you've never felt before. And now, let's get on with this fabulous guest I told you about. Some of you may even know him. His name is David Young, and he's an abstract artist. I love that term. And a renowned musician. Not just a musician, but he is well known, who is lauded for playing 2 Renaissance flutes at one time in harmony. I love that. Ranging from new rock to art rock, his original music reflects his deep connection to the world and to the universe and spirit. He has recorded 60 albums and sold over 1 million copies. David's music is well known for its soothing sounds and healing properties. It's a staple in hospitals, healing centers, spas throughout the country. John Hopkins Medical Centers have an entire floor, even floors, that play his music 24/7. Just because of this reason that it is so uplifting and spiritual, and it helps people, it heals. It has been estimated that over 300,000 people are treated daily all over the world while listening to David's music. He travels throughout the country hosting his signature workshops. It's called A Portal Between Heaven and Earth. I like that, David, which combines his healing music and guided meditations. Really, you got to check him out on YouTube or even on Pandora, whatever your musical app is. But this is incredible stuff. And with that, I would like to bring on David Young. Hello, David.
Hi there. How you guys doing?
Well, I am doing wonderful, and I think all the listeners are doing wonderfully. I'm so pleased to have you on because I do know for myself how healing music is. And let's talk about that. Why? Because there are people who are not, maybe not musically inclined, or maybe, some days there are people that go without music for the whole day, which I can't do. But there are people that do that. Can we talk about the power of music?
Sure. Well, there's so many different angles that we could discuss that from, why music is healing and why it has an effect on us. And, on a basic level, whatever we're thinking and whatever we're focusing our mind on is kind of like the movie that we're seeing in our head, Yes. And when something takes our attention off of whatever is bothering us, then that has a chance to release. And if you're listening to some beautiful music that relaxes you, it slows your heart rate down, but it also takes your mind off of whatever's bothering you, so this way it can release. That's a real basic,
Yeah, it does. It takes your mind off of stuff. And it also, I think it allows you to just ease your mind. Yeah, music can take you it can take you away, basically. It can take you to better places, just like a little vacation. It's like a really good movie.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. In the mid-90s, I was, before the digital age, I was selling music. I was the only musician performing and selling my CDs at the different spa conventions around the United States. And
really?
there was one of these big expos like about every 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so every major city like New York and LA and Chicago and everyone you can name had a spa convention where the spas in that region would go and buy everything from their skincare, their microdermabrasion machines, all that stuff. And the other thing that they had to buy, because this was before the digital age, is that they had to buy CDs, because the only way they could have music that was appropriate for their spa.
Yeah, I remember CDs.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, I remember them too. And I used to sell thousands of CDs at these conventions every day. It was really, really incredible. And one of the unique things about this, because at one point there were over 20,000 spas and massage therapists, Reiki practitioners, and healers all over the country that were using my music on a daily basis, And if you think about somebody who's getting a massage or a facial treatment or something like that, they have their eyes closed for an hour, and while they're getting their treatment, and this really relaxing, ethereal music is playing while their eyes are closed. And the music that they're hearing is something that's very spiritual and so when your eyes are closed and you're hearing the spiritual music that's giving you the spiritual feeling, it's natural for your mind to just go with the flow of the music. And it was really, it's a very healing thing for people to do, to have their eyes closed and to listen to something that's spiritual, because that induces our mind to open up and go with the flow. And, you know, one of the things that over the years that I started doing later was to perform at the international conventions for people who had had near-death experiences. And when I would perform at these conventions, people would come up to me afterwards, and sometimes they had tears in their eyes, and they would say that when they had their near-death experience, part of the experience was going through that tunnel with the light at the end of the tunnel, and
Right.
They said that the music that they experienced during their near-death experience was so powerful and godly and beautiful, and that the closest thing that they ever heard to the music they heard in heaven while they had their near-death experience was the music that I played at the event.
Oh, that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And it is. I mean, if you are listening to music, it makes sense. If you are being fed the beauty of, music that is actually almost channeled, and it is bringing that heaven here. We are moved by the chords. We are moved by the sound. We are moved by the voices. We are moved by the words. And it brings us to wherever that music is. That's why it's so important to what you listen to. It's so important. If you're listening to, I used to love music with minor chords, and they tend to be sad songs. Well, guess what happens?
Yeah.
Your mood goes right in with the sad. But if you are lifted up, and you are listening to music that has the harmonies that are enriching and just have this lifting effect, and you have words that help to guide you there, my gosh, you can have your own experience. It's like a guided meditation.
Yeah. I've recorded 60 albums, and 50 of those albums are instrumental flute music, and 10 of them are vocal music. And my instrumental music is way more popular than the vocal music that I've done. And one of the things that makes my music identifiable is that I have this technique of playing 2 flutes at one time in harmony. And people ask me how I do it, and I say, well, I put one in my left hand, I put the other one in my right hand, which is kind of...
I wanted to talk about that because, I was not an instrumentalist. I was more of a vocalist for a long, long time. But I never saw anybody play 2 flutes at the same time. And I find that totally fascinating. And what got you started doing that, just out of curiosity?
Well, in 1990, I was 30 years old. I moved to California. I ran out of money. I was down to my last $100. I was playing rock music, as a lead guitar player and singer. And because I was desperate, because I was, down to my last $100 in LA, I went down to Venice Beach to try playing my flutes with a little basket, like as a street performer. It was like the worst moment of my whole life, And I met a woman. I met a woman who played the harp, and we decided to make a tape together because she had been playing at Venice Beach for about 6 months. And, she said, if we just rely on people giving us tips, we're not going to make enough money to really make it worth our time. But if we make a tape, a cassette tape, that's the generation before CDs,
I remember. I was there too.
She said, if we make a tape, we could sell the tapes. And then at the end of the day, we'll have enough money where it'll be worth our time. So we made a tape with my last $100, and we called the tape Celestial Winds. Ooh. And we sold 10,000 copies of that tape over the following 2 years playing at Venice Beach on the weekends,
That's
and
amazing.
yeah, that's how I got started with that. But the way I started playing two flutes at one time was because in the beginning we only knew 6 songs together. And so that meant if we were playing from 10 in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, that meant we had to play each one of those 6 songs about 30 or 40 times a day. And for a musician, that's called torture. Okay?
Yeah, that is torture. Yeah. Yeah, I know. No creativity. Yeah, it's just, torrid. So you decided
during the afternoon, after I'd played those songs at least 20 times already, people would be walking by and they would say, "Look at that beautiful woman and that beautiful harp." And, I was like the invisible man. And so during the afternoon, after we played those songs 20 times, I would pick up a second flute to see if there was a way that I could play 2 flutes at one time just to break up the boredom. And every time I put 2 flutes in my mouth, whoever was walking by would say, "Hey, look, that guy's playing 2 flutes at one time." And then she was invisible. So that was really the only reason why I started to play the 2 flutes.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. That is a funny story. And now you've just perfected it.
Yeah, in the beginning it was very difficult because I'd have to think, of 2 different things. My left hand would be doing a different note pattern than my right hand, and it's not a normal thing to do. It took me about 3 years of practicing 6 hours a day for me to get it. And then once I got it, you can ask me math questions while I'm playing 2 flutes at one time, and I can do math in my head while I'm playing 2 flutes just because I've done it, so much.
That's amazing. And so when you started to get into all of the healing music, how did you go from just being a musician, and you started with that wonderful learning how to play the 2 flutes, and you had the 10,000 copies sold. That was your step in. But then you really channeled the music, don't you?
Yeah. What happened was whenever, I have a saying that survival is a great teacher. And one of the things that I noticed when we were playing at Venice Beach in 1990 and 1991 and 92 was that every once in a while, we would have a customer come up while we were playing and say, "I'm a massage therapist. Are these all instrumental? Are they all great for massage?" And at that point, we had 4 cassette tapes, and I would say, "Yeah, every one of these is harp and flute. There's no drums. There's no rhythm. There's no singing. There's no speaking. It's all this relaxing flute music." And so the massage therapist would say, "Okay, then I'll buy all 4 of them." And so it started to become very popular for people who are doing massage or any kind of healing work like Reiki, they became our best customers, and then after about I'd say about 3 or 4 years of that, I found out that there was a spa convention in Long Beach that was, an hour away from Los Angeles. So I contacted the promoter of that expo and made an arrangement for me to play music at the spa convention, which opened up a whole new world because now there were like 10,000 or 20,000 or 50,000 people involved in the massage industry or the skincare industry coming to that expo to buy things for their spa. And I was the only musician playing and selling my music for 7 years in all of these conventions. And so I was the only,
you were the only one.
Yeah, it was incredible. So, I mean, I sold 1,000 CDs in a day at times. And there are a lot of musicians that never sell 1,000 CDs in their whole career, let alone in one day, and that was an amazing time in my career. So, all of
kept taking chances. That's what did it. You know what I mean? You'd see something and you'd try it, and you didn't have the fear step in. You didn't have it because you needed to do it. And so you just did it. And that's an awesome quality. So many people will get, they just get handicapped, oh my gosh, I only have $100. What am I going to do? And, it's $100. I can't spend it on that. And they don't think of the leap that they will have forward if they use that money that they find so precious to
Yes.
be, you know what I mean? To take a chance. They don't want to take a chance. They'll do the opposite. And you took the chance. They'll do the opposite. And they'll think, oh, I got to ration this. I've got to really protect it. Do you see what I mean?
Oh, totally. And that reminds me of something that happened back in Venice Beach that I've actually never shared in an interview that I think will be pretty funny right now.
Sure.
You know, the way the whole Venice Beach thing works is that you got whoever gets there first gets the spot, and that's your spot for the day. And
Right.
so we used to get down to Venice Beach around 8:30, 9 o'clock, so we could get there and get our spot. You know,
Makes sense.
and once you're there, we would play literally the whole day,
Fun.
and that's what we did. And there were these people who were starting this church in Los Angeles, and they asked us to come play at their church on Sunday morning, like from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock. And we're like, well, we don't want to lose our spot if we won't get a spot if we get to Venice Beach at 1 o'clock after the church service is over, you know? And so we were afraid to leave Venice Beach, you know, to play at this church. And that church became very famous later on as the Agape Church with Michael Beckwith. You know what I mean? But that was when they were first getting started, and they would have 20 or 30 people come to their Sunday service, you know. We didn't want to lose.
Gosh.
Yeah.
See, now that was the perfect example.
Yeah.
So you had it both ways, and we learned,
Right.
you know. But yeah, everybody does that. But that's a fantastic example, David. That's a good story. You know, it's true. I think opportunity just comes to us. And if we don't take it, it goes on to someone else. It doesn't just stay with us. And so if we're too concerned about just whatever, losing our place on a beach or losing the $100, I really feel that's when we get hurt the most. And it's the difference between staying in that really stuck comfort zone or moving into something new.
You know what? This reminds me of something else that happened a long time ago that I think you'll get a kick out of. So we used to get hired for all kinds of things when we were playing at Venice Beach because, you know, people figured if these people are playing at Venice Beach, they got to be desperate for money. And, you know, we can hire them for a reasonable price. That's why they're in Venice Beach, you know. So that was back in the day when people would hire us to play at a funeral, which coming from a rock background, that seemed like the craziest thing in the world, you know. That's really funny. Playing at a funeral, you know. Anyway,
it's not so Maria.
Right.
Right.
So at one point, I think this was in 1992, we got hired to play at this children's hospital, but it was in the terminally ill patients ward or floor, whatever you want to call that, right?
Yeah.
And you know, it was so sad to see all these little kids, you know, who had a couple of months to live, or you know, it was just so depressing.
Yeah.
You know, when we were done with that, it's like, oh my God, no matter what they're going to pay us, we can't do that again, because it really, really affected the two of us, my partner and I.
Sure.
And the very next day, my partner, this was back in the day, long before cell phones, and my partner had an answering machine, like a tape answering machine. Remember the old answering machines, you know?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And this message came through the following day, something about another hospital. And it's like, oh my, she said, you know, I just went to hit the delete button right away, because there's no way we want to do this again, because it was so depressing, you know. But she hit the wrong button, and she didn't hit the delete button.
Wow.
She hit the replay button, and the replay button, it was the producer of the television show General Hospital that wanted to use our music on the show. And they started using our music on the show, and for probably 10 years, they used our music. Every time there was a character on General Hospital who was a psychic, and every single time this psychic was on camera, they used our music. And so the first time,
that's incredible. First
time we heard our music on TV, knowing that it was going around the world to all the millions of people watching General Hospital, it was the most exciting thing the first time. But then after that, it was really no big deal.
Wow. And that, my dear, was divine intervention.
Right.
To push that button one way and think you're pushing it, but actually you're pushing another. And then it works out for you. That's incredible. That's an incredible story. And that's how it works in the world too. You know what I mean? When you're really starting to be in the flow of what you're doing. And I think you must have been, because that's just too cool. That's a very cool story. I like that one very much. Thanks. So now, I mean, I listened to some of your pieces, and the healing aspect of the piece is incredible. Well, we're going to have to take a break. But guys, for everyone out there, you're listening to Magical Moments. I'm your host, Alena Chapman. And what better way to reach that ease than through music? My gosh. When David and I come back, we're going to start talking a little bit more about this music and what exactly it does and how does he use it to the best. And some of the wonderful stories that he has of how he's done what he's done, you know? So come right back. We'll see you in just a minute.
Welcome back. You're listening to Magical Moments with Alena Chapman, helping you find ease and betterment with every episode. Download more on your favorite podcast platform. Now, here's Alena.
Welcome back to Magical Moments. And today I have David Young. Magnificent. And if you haven't listened to his music, guys, you really have to. I love it. I love his music. I love it because it does help to heighten my meditations. It does help me to reach. I do a lot of journeys, as you all know. I help people with journeys. That music can help everyone just totally relax and just let their mind and their spirit go, which I love. So if you haven't listened to David Young's music, make sure you do. Look it up on YouTube or Pandora or whatever. But right now,
a website too.
Oh, and you have a website. What is your website? We might as well give that right now since we talked about it.
Yeah, it's davidyoungmusic.com.
I think we can remember that, don't you, folks? Yeah. That's probably the easiest one we've ever had. davidyoungsmusic.com. You got it. So let's get back into this. I mean, you have been evolving. You did what I did in my journey. You evolved into where you are now. And now you tell us where you exactly are now, the spiritual path you're on now, because it has been a spiritual path.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I started meditating 37 years ago, long before it was trendy and popular, you know?
Yeah, me too.
And,
I know.
And in 2014, I started doing these meditation events that were called soul activation meditations, you know, because people would say that when they came to my flute meditations, that they felt like their soul was being activated, like their light was getting turned on, you know? Yeah. So then after a year, and it was apparent that we were entering this whole new age of soul awakening. Right. And because the world was starting to experience this ascension, you know?
That's true.
Then I changed the events to be called soul ascension meditations, you know?
Okay.
And then,
yeah.
And then, so it was called that for a year, and then I decided to change it to be called a portal between heaven and earth, because that's the way people were describing it, because I was keeping statistics on what people were experiencing at my events every night. And at this point, I did 509 events in 5 years, okay?
That's amazing.
And 80% of the people who came to my workshops, they were 2.5-hour workshops where I would teach for a half hour, then I'd play, do a meditation for a half hour, and then give people a chance to share their experiences. Then there would be an intermission, a second meditation, and then a second sharing. But 80% of the people who came to the workshops, by the time the event was over, these people shared their experience where they reconnected with their mom, their grandmother, their best friend from childhood who died young, somebody who they loved that was now in heaven.
Wow.
Or they would have an experience with one of the ascended masters, like Jesus or Buddha or Moses or Krishna or Mother Mary or Archangel Michael,
Right.
So I had to stop I had to stop. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
I said I really believe that. It's funny. Music does. I loved music. In fact, I have a music degree, just so you know. And I studied music from the time I was 15. And I always thought to myself, the reason people, in my graduating class, let's be real here. In my graduating class, there were only 3 of us who didn't do drugs. And I was one of them. And the kids would always ask, how come you're not trying this? Because you try everything. And I used to say, you guys, it's the music. I get totally high on the music. And it just brings me to places that it just lifts me. I don't need the stuff. Every day I'm surrounded by music. I said, I guess that's my drug, I used to call it. And I got the degrees in it. I taught it. I always have music in my life. So when you say it's lifting people so that they can have the access to see somebody who has passed over, because nothing ever dies, folks. And I know we don't believe in all that stuff. Sometimes we think we magically just appear in heaven, but we're souls, and it doesn't die. So when people are lifted into that, I can believe that. I mean, that's no problem. I understand it. I know where music can take you.
Well, because I was keeping track of how many people were reconnecting with their loved ones and how many people were having an experience with one of the ascended masters or the archangels. 8,000 people had shared at my events, because I had kept track of, I kept numbers of adding numbers every night. 8,000 people had shared those experiences, and that did not include all the people who had experiences in the inner light, or people who had a healing, or people who had a past life regression. That 8,000 people was people who reconnected with a loved one or an experience with the ascended master. And when that started, first of all, I grew up Jewish, and the first ascended master who started appearing to people at my events was Jesus. And because I grew up Jewish, I was like, this is like the weirdest thing ever. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, he's saying, I'm here.
All of this stuff is in my book, The True Story of Jesus and His Wife, Mary Magdalene. Okay?
Yes, there we go. And I love it. I want to read your book. And that's an interesting thing in itself. I know that, we have, I was talking to my mom yesterday, and I said, Mary Magdalene, don't talk about her. Because she's always represented in this bad light. But new stuff is coming up. She's not who we were trained to know.
Absolutely not. Okay, first of all, there are 5 places in the Bible where Jesus is called rabbi. Okay, now in order to become a rabbi, there were 2 things that you had to have first before you could become a rabbi. And those 2 things were, you had to have a wife and you had to have children, or else you could not be a rabbi. Yeah.
Really?
And for sure. Yeah. So what happened was Mary Magdalene came from the wealthiest family in that whole area, okay? And Mary Magdalene's father was actually Joseph of Arimathea. And so in the Bible, where, after that horrible day, the last person to see Jesus in the Bible is Mary Magdalene, and she saw Jesus at the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, this is something that every good Christian is going to love, this part right here, okay? So we all know from the holiday of Easter, we all know that there were 3 men that were crucified that day, right?
Right.
Right. But only one of those men was taken down off the cross and put into the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. That's what it says in the Bible.
Yes, that does say that in the Bible, right?
The reason why only one of those 3 men was taken off the cross and put in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea is because only one of those 3 men was married to Joseph of Arimathea's daughter, whose name was Mary Magdalene. The reason why her name was Mary Magdalene is because her last name, Magdalena, comes because she grew up in that place called Magdala, which was a village very close to Bethlehem, and
Which was very common back then.
Yep.
They were
and
named
so,
after where they came from. Yeah.
So, so here's another thing that I'm sure your folks will really, really love. So if you would, okay.
We're waking up today. Yes.
Right. So if I were to ask you about your 5 closest friends, the 5 people that are most important to you, do you know if those 5 people are married or not?
Yes.
Of course.
I do. What about you guys out there in Listen Land? Yeah, of course we do. The 5 closest people.
Right. So anybody who says that they don't believe Jesus was married obviously is not that close to him, because the closest people in your life, you know if they're married or not.
Interesting. Yeah.
Jesus showed up with Mary Magdalene so many times at my events, to different people at my events. Actually, over 1,500 people shared their experience with Jesus, Mary Magdalene, or Mother Mary. So a person could say, oh, well, how do you know that wasn't the devil impersonating himself to look like Jesus and Mary Magdalene? And I would say, well, because the devil doesn't heal people. And the people who came to my events had different healings from Jesus, Mary Magdalene, or Mother Mary. Now, here's another thing that I'm sure your people are going to totally love this part. So
this is good, though. I mean, it's good to open our minds. And there is never one way, folks. I mean, we have to look at some of the possibilities. And what if, and do I believe that if we believe that Jesus is in heaven, and we believe that he is of light, and we believe that God is omnipresent in the spirit, in every leaf and every blade, then why in the name of heaven do you not think that Jesus can't enter in and heal? And why
Jesus can do it. Krishna can do it. Moses can do it. Mother Mary can do it. Buddha can do it. Here's the thing. There were 2 major things that separated life for thousands of years, and that was oceans and languages. So let's say you grew up in India and you spoke whatever language they spoke in your village in India. 99.9% of the people never, ever crossed that ocean 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, and never spoke another language besides the language that they grew up speaking in their little village in the middle of wherever.
That's right. And limited.
Okay, so let's just say that we got a guy in India who falls and hits his head on a rock, and he goes into a coma, and he wakes up from his coma a month ago, and he says to his friends and his family, he says, wow, you guys, you can't believe this, but while I was in my coma, Krishna came to me, and he healed me, and he worked with me, and he was so full of love and light and everything. It's amazing. Now, let's just say on that same day, 2,000 miles away in China, a Chinese guy falls down, hits his head on a rock, goes into a coma, wakes up from the coma, and tells all of his friends and family, you guys are not going to believe it, but while I was in a coma, Buddha was working with me. Buddha, really, the actual Buddha came to me with all this love and light, and he healed me, and now I'm alive. And let's just say that halfway around the world, there's a Christian person who falls and hits his head on a rock, goes into a coma. When he wakes up from the coma, and he says to all of his friends and family, you guys, Jesus came to me. The problem is that those 3 people were separated by oceans and never knew that other people who were not in their religion that they were born into had the same exact experiences as they had. And not only did the oceans separate them, years later when books were written about them, because they were written in different languages and most people didn't know how to read more than one language, they didn't realize they were talking about the same thing, because Buddha and Jesus and Krishna and Moses and Mother Mary and all of the ascended masters, all of them can work with us and heal us. The problem is that when we are closed-minded and think that it's just one way or the highway, you know what I mean? It's not one way or the highway, because I can tell you, there have been Jewish people at my events who couldn't believe it that Mother Mary or Jesus appeared to them during the meditation. They just couldn't believe it. Like, why in the world would Jesus or Mother Mary appear to me if I grew up Jewish? And there were Christian people who had experiences with Buddha. And they would be like, oh my God, why would Buddha appear to me if I am a Bible-carrying Christian? You know what I mean?
Right.
There's no separation between them. Everything in the physical world gets separated.
Yes.
You're rich or you're poor, you're this color or that color. You know, everything gets separated in the physical world, but in the heavenly dimension, everything is connected by this magical thing called oneness. So because Jesus and Buddha and Moses and all of them, they all are working together. It's not the way people make it look in this physical world. Like, oh, you're a Christian or you're a Buddhist or you're Jewish. You're either one or the other. There is no one or the other in the heavenly dimension, because Jesus and Buddha and Moses and Krishna, all of them, are all working together on the same team. And there's just as many women on that team, goddesses like Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene and Isis and Kuan Yin. There's just as many women who have reached enlightenment as there are men who have reached enlightenment.
Definitely. And it is a oneness, folks. It really is a oneness. It's so funny. We think oneness is in our own little what we want to see. But really, in the universe and in God and in, well, spirit, in all, it is one. We are one. We're from one source. We are all part of that source.
I have a way of explaining oneness.
Go ahead. I'd love to hear it.
Because I did 500 of these events, and I heard 8,000 people share those experiences. And because I've been studying spirituality for 37 years, I've come up with really simple ways of understanding how this oneness works. So let's just say, I'm sure all your listeners have had an experience in life where you think of somebody out of the blue. You haven't thought of this person for 20 years. They come into your mind, and you're thinking, wow, where did that come from? And then a minute later, your phone rings, and it's that person from 20 years ago who's calling you out of the blue, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I was just thinking about you for no reason, and now you're calling me.
Sure. Everyone does that.
Right.
Yeah.
We've all had, let me explain to you how that really happened. Every single one of us has spiritual guides in heaven. It could be one of your relatives, it could be your grandfather who's looking out for you from heaven and plans beautiful things in your life, or it could be one of the ascended masters. Doesn't matter. But our loved ones in heaven are able to give us messages or hunches, and when they come out of the blue, we don't know where they're coming from, right? But the same way that you had this thought about a friend from 20 years ago and then they called you, that's exactly how heaven works, except they don't need a phone. So let's say you're in heaven. Let's say whether a person is having a near-death experience, and just for the record, folks, over 20 million Americans have had a near-death experience that was documented by their nurse or doctor in a hospital. There are 20 million medical records where a person shares their entire near-death experience.
Yeah.
Okay? So whether you're kind of alive from a near-death experience or whether you've died, once we get to that dimension, there's a different set of rules in that dimension. Like, for example, from the time we can walk, we learn about gravity, right?
Right, exactly.
But heaven does not have gravity. That's a physical limitation. That's why everybody flies around.
That's right.
Because if you have a choice of walking down to the store on your second day in heaven to get a loaf of bread, or flying over to the store to get that loaf of bread, you're going to fly over because it's fun.
Right. That's cute. I love it. Well, folks, it is true. It's true that we have to open our minds, and we have to be able to see that there's just more than what we've always thought was the only way. And that also helps us to have tolerance for one another. And we can start to have tolerance. That's a great way to open up, that somebody may believe a little bit differently than us. And guess what? It's okay, because everything comes from the light, as I like to say. And yeah, I love your story, David. That is awesome.
Hey, I want to say something about tolerance. Have you ever met anybody that came from Israel?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you asking me? Yes, I have. I have a very good friend and client from Israel, believe it or not.
Okay. Now, is her skin the same color as yours, or is it a little darker shade color than your skin is?
His is a little bit darker than mine.
Right. And in the summertime, when it's really hot and he's out in the summer lot, his skin gets really dark, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Jesus was born in Israel. Everybody knows, right?
Right.
His skin was darker than white skin. Now, this is one absolute cure for prejudice. Any Christian person who has an attitude about people whose skin is a darker color than theirs, Jesus, his skin was a darker color than yours. And so one of the things that I'm actually going to be starting to do in the fall, we are working on having the true story of Jesus and his wife, Mary Magdalene, made into a TV miniseries, an 8-part miniseries. And the miniseries at this point is going to be called Sacred Love. But one of the things that I'm going to be doing is that my girlfriend and I are going to be purchasing an RV in the next month. And we're going to be traveling across the country. And because I'm a painter, I am going to be repainting Jesus's face to be the actual color that it is in any church that wants me to do it. And I'm going to do it for free. So this way people can see, okay, if Jesus is your guy, if he's your favorite guy, if you like him more than Buddha and Krishna and Moses, okay, that's your choice, right? But if you want to see him, you should see him as he really was, closer to being a black man than he was to being a white man. So how can you be prejudiced? If you're a believer in Jesus, how can you have a prejudice of people with darker skin than you? If your Lord and Savior, if that's the way you look at him, if your Lord and Savior had that same color skin that you have an attitude about with your neighbors.
It's so true. It is so true. It is. It's just opening our eyes to what's true. And when we do that, then we understand more. But we have to open our eyes to it. You can lead a horse to water, and it's the only water in the whole desert.
But you can't make them think.
You can't make them drink or think. And if they're not going to drink it, then they won't see. But if it's the only water and it's the only truth, or is there one truth? But if there's a way to open up that truth, why not take it? It enriches your life. It brings you more understanding. It offers you more healing. How can people, you already gave them your website and you're telling them about this wonderful thing you're going to do for the churches. I love that. How else can people hear your music if they're interested, David?
Well, you can go to YouTube and put in my name. There's, tons of interviews there. There's musical performances there. You can go to my website, anything that Wikipedia, there's many different ways. The internet has changed everything with the way people can experience music.
It is. It is incredible, isn't it? It's kind of neat.
Yeah, I get about 1 million streams every 2 months now, which is really great.
That is very, very cool. And guys, Young is Young, just so you know, okay? And you should take a look. And really, today is a beautiful day to start to just maybe do a little reading about Mary Magdalene or Jesus. Or maybe start looking at your neighbor who you haven't talked to because maybe they're a different faith than you. Maybe learning a little bit more about what they believe. Maybe just kind of reaching over, and maybe you don't even have to do that. Maybe it's just saying hello and starting to form a relationship and a friendship and learning from each other. Really, that's what we're meant to do. And you don't know how much beautiful opportunity, love, understanding, and possibly even a higher way of living will come from that. Just that simple act. It all begins with just saying hello. Okay? I love you all. David, thank you so much for being a part of the show. I thought it was so much fun. I love your stories. They're fantastic. And for everyone out there, remember, and it's so important, Spirit is love. And so in any way that we show that love, feel that love, be that love, then we are with Spirit. I love you all. Namaste.
This has been Magical Moments with Alena, featuring Alena Chapman. If you missed an episode, download it now on iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn, CastBox, Deezer, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform. Learn more online at soulmanifesto.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.